As you may or may not know, I just got back from a trip to Iceland. A few friends and I found this awesome deal on flights, so we were able to kind of sneak in this trip in the middle of the year here. We took so much video and stuff, and I'm going to have this whole series of videos coming out from Iceland that's going to be long range, close range, proximity, chasing, all this stuff. And I'm certain that there's going to inevitably be like a lot of questions about like, oh, what did you use? How did you do this? What's your setup? And I wanted to kind of address those ahead of time. I'm going to take this quad off the top here and just tell you quickly about it. This is my primary long range quad. It has a session mount on it right now. I usually have a GoPro Hero 6 on it. For whatever reason, I was using a session mount. And then I also have this board out to specifically be able to use the Insta360 camera. Runcam Swift 2 is usually the camera that I use. These are T-Motor F60 Pro 2. These are the 1750 kV version for 6S specifically. Inside of it, I've got the original Hobbywing stack. I'm meaning to update to the new version, but this is what I've got in it right now. Works great on 6S. It's done great for me. I'm super pumped with it. On the back, you can see that I'm using the TBS Crossfire. I have it kind of mounted a little bit weirdly right now because this is the way that I want it configured for long-range flying, but if I'm going to be doing anything proximity, I usually mount it a little bit differently to make it a little bit more protected. And inside of it, I have a 5-volt TBS Unify. This is the one that can bump up to 500, 800 milliwatts. Yeah, this is my standard quad. I use the Azure 5051 props. They've been just a solid for me. They don't break. They keep the jello down, and they fly great and fairly efficiently. And then for batteries, I run the China Hobbyline Mini Star 1250 6-cell. These are the 70C variant. I don't think there's any other options out there. And these are awesome. I have actually, with this rig, with a GoPro, managed flights that last over 8 minutes, depending on the kind of flying that I'm doing. So like, this size, this battery is perfect for, this kind of free range, mid range thing that we do in FPV. So awesome batteries. Go check them out if you need a budget battery. And then for the VTX antenna, what I typically run is a TBS Triumph. They've been trusted by everyone for their long range and their short range and their durability, racing, everything. And so I typically stick to this antenna for just about everything that I do. And man, am I on the struggle bus right now. So yeah, so this is my typical long range setup. Now I have different kinds of setups that I will run for different kinds of missions, but typically this is what I've got going on. Next up, I want to talk about radio. So this is, I think, one of the most important parts of the system, both in terms of video and control. And so I want to kind of spend a little bit more time talking about how I have my setup, what I like about it, what I don't like, all of those things. So currently I'm using a FreeSky 9XD Tyrannus. This is not the radio that I typically run. I usually use a Futaba 18SZ, but it's in the shop right now, so this is what I used on this trip. On the back here, you can see the clear view is mounted on this little kickstand for the radio, and then behind the clear view is the TBS Crossfire. Then finally on the bottom here on the battery bay door, I have this 2200 milliamp 3-cell mounted to the back, and this is going to be used to power my Crossfire and my clear view externally so that I'm not drawing too much power out of the internal battery of the radio. When I'm out flying for 8 minutes at a time for 10, 20 batteries a day, you start to drain that battery really fast. So having a bigger backup battery is super important. Then, just to kind of quickly show you how I've got this wired up, right down here there's a little power distribution board, and I can plug the clear view straight in here, and then I can plug into the XT30 on the Crossfire down here. And now this 3-cell powers both this receiver as well as this transmitter, and now both of those are powered off this battery, and everything is wired up fairly cleanly. So we'll throw my antenna setup on here. Depending on what I'm doing, I'll definitely run a directional antenna on here, especially if I'm going for like a 2-mile flight. I put the antenna up here, and then typically I will run In addition to that, a circular polarized antenna. I know that's not necessarily the recommended way to use a clear view, but for the types of missions I'm doing, I like to have both available. But if I, if I'm going out way further, I'll run a second directional antenna. This is a Lumineer Axi squared 5.8 right-hand circular polarized patch. Both of them right-hand polarized, etc. Then on the Crossfire, I run this Immortal T transmission side that has the RPSMA antenna. These seem to be the best, other than maybe the diamond antenna, but I've never had one, and I've had a lot of success with this antenna. So typically this is the radio setup I use. I can hold it, I can handheld it like this if I want to. Typically I like to run a battery strap, and it's actually pretty well balanced even with all the extra weight on the back. And then, I can use the kickstand to kind of orient the antennas a little bit, or I can manually go in and change the antennas. And then this kind of becomes my tripod. So I'm situated, and I can kind of point towards the mission that I'm going to be running. So like if I'm going to be going up that mountain, and then I can usually maybe just even turn a little bit if I want to, and kind of readjust where my video is pointing. And this gives me the best diversity. So I could use the goggle module to do this, but typically you might kind of sag a little bit and not necessarily be pointing in the right place at the right time. I find that my hands and my body are a little bit more stable, and I can point exactly where I want to be going. So again, with the addition of sticking this on here, running that external battery, I can run the Crossfire up to 2 watts if I need to. I've never been over 1 watt, and then I have the clear view for the best video for range possible. So I really love this setup. If you're considering doing long range, I would definitely recommend mounting things kind of in this fashion. Next up, just really quick, with the goggles, I use the HDO by Fat Shark. These are my special TRL edition ones that I use on the show. I have the TrueDV 3.5 in here. My Clearview goggle receiver is in the shop. Hopefully I'll be getting that back fairly soon. And then, I take this cable and I run it down to my radio, which I'm holding in my hands, and then this allows me to run this off the Clearview. I typically run the goggle battery just because it'll last forever when you're running on the external radio, so meaning not on the module, and then I also get the fan access. An important note about long-range flying is you want to always make sure that you have an SD card in your DVR and that your DVR is working. Before you take off, every time, a part of your systems check should be make sure that your DVR is running, so that if you go down, at the worst case scenario, you have some footage from that flight. At the best case scenario, you'll be able to retrieve your quad, and you'll know where it is that you crashed when you went down. So always run your DVR. Next up, I think is important to address is charging situation. So when you're traveling, when you're on the road, you need to be able to charge, right? When I take my gear and I fly to somewhere like Iceland, I can only bring so many batteries before I weigh my bag down so much that it's ludicrous. So instead of keeping more batteries, I bring a charger, and I bring a charger specifically that can do DC input. And as such, I always travel with these alligator clips, and I can use these to power off of any DC source. Typically that ends up being a car battery, and if you just run the car while you're charging, you can typically get away with a full day of charging. So yeah, and then this is the Hobby Wow charger. I have not yet made a review on this. I need to. I love this charger. It has 2 ports. And if you combined with a parallel board or whatever, you can charge, like I think it's 12 amps at 6 cell. Is as much as you need, and so you'll be able to charge up a lot of batteries really fast with this charger on DC plugged into your car battery. Another thing to quick mention, always travel with the soldering iron. This is TS100 or SandSmart. I think it is on Amazon. Gotta have this. I've made a video about it. Go ahead and check that out. I keep another bag full of spare parts. In here are your receivers, transmitters, cameras, motors, extra screws and motor nuts and stuff like that. Just everything that you have in all of your builds, just have a couple extra of each of them in a little bag like this that you can just throw in your bag. I also carry a giant bag of tools. Obviously, you need tools when you break quads or when you need to work on quads. In here are just about everything that you would need to build a quad. You got, different drivers, snips. I carry a really cheap, like 20-cent knife that I can feel free to throw away at TSA if they give me crap about it, even though it's allowed to bring it. tweezers, all those things. And I just like that in a nice little bag situation. This bag tends to be miscellaneous camera gears, extra batteries. Like I keep a pair of headphones in here, a little USB fan, because that's pretty cool and handy. You know, a 3-port charger with GoPro batteries in it. This is a run cam. My GoPro will go in here, my Session will go in here. I have an extra goggle battery in here just because I tend to forget this less often than I forget goggle battery, so I just keep an extra one in it just in case I need it, and then another little USB battery backup. So yeah, all these things just kind of live in this little pouch. Up here I'll keep a little XT60 USB charger, as well as a spare USB cable. You know, just all the kinds of things that you would need handy whenever you're out in the field trying to get some footage shot. Then in addition to that, I also carry, this is my memory card situation. So in here is the Western Digital My Passport Wireless Pro. This is an awesome tool for long range flying. In it, and I've made a whole video about this that I'm going to link, but in it has an SD card holder, a mini or a full-size SD, which you can use an adapter to put a micro SD, and you can connect to it with your phone and like import all the files. So like if you're running short on memory cards or something like that, between each flight or between riskier flights, you can plug it in, get the footage off of those cards so that you don't lose it, and then take off after having dumped all that. And then in here I have you know, a little organizer full of micro SD cards and full-size SD cards and SD card adapters and all that, so that I can jump through different, you know, as cards fill up throughout the day, or as I'm about to do something risky where I would lose a quad or a GoPro or something like that, I'll swap out cards and make sure that I at least come home with that footage. And then in addition to my GoPros, I also carry an Insta360 360 degree camera. I love this thing. I need to make a video about it directly, but this is a really cool tool for film making. Yeah, so this also sits in the front of my bag. Something that's really important to bring is most backpacks that you can get today for FPV especially come with a rain shield. And these are lifesavers, especially for the FPV Think Tank helipack, which is the bag that I use almost exclusively. This will go over your bag and over the quads on your bag. So like if you get caught in like a rainy situation, you can put it over the whole thing and cover up all the quads, cover up your bag, cover up your expensive camera gear, all that stuff. This is an absolute lifesaver. You've got to carry this with you when you're going to be out and away from the car, especially hiking or whatever. Huge deal. Okay, so the next thing I want to talk about is cameras really quick. So the camera that I use for vlogging is the A7 Mark III. For those that know anything about cameras, this is actually a fairly new camera. It just came out not that long ago, and it is awesome. Underneath it, I use the Manfrotto tripod. I like this style better than the beady looking ones, the Jobies. It works better for me. It just fits my style a little bit better. I have on it right now a Sony 10-18 lens. This is a very wide lens. It kind of makes that nice like vloggy kind of look. It makes it really easy to kind of point the camera back at yourself and not worry too much about getting everything perfectly in frame. It's just easy. I almost always have on the lens a circular polarizer filter. This polarizer just lets different amounts of light into the camera, and it just helps me make sure that I'm exposing properly and it looks more and more pretty. I know that sounds funny, but that's just kind of the way I look at it. So if you look now into this camera, you can see that this picture is fairly wide. I'm sorry that it's so washed out from these lights, but you can tell, you know, everything is very wide and that you can see a wide range of view. Now, if I'm going to be shooting B-roll, I have one of two other lenses. I have a 30 1.4 as well as an 85 1.8. I usually bring the 85 1.8 because it's a little bit more versatile. It's got a little bit farther range, and I think it just looks so pretty. So if I swap over to this, you can see that this is a much tighter lens, but at the same time it also makes for just absolutely gorgeous footage. So like if I pointed at the camera here that we're recording with, you can see that it's just everything's washed away and it looks so just unique and beautiful, and I love everything about that. That's just the way I love to make B-roll in that way. So typically I either have this 10-18 or this 85mm 1.8 on my camera. And you'll notice that there's like a fuzzy mic missing. That's because it's on this camera right here, and I needed to borrow it, so it's just not on my camera right now. But this is the typical vlogging setup that I have. It's either the 10-18, the 85, or the 30. I think that'll do it for camera. So the one last thing that I want to address is like, it's going to sound kind of funny, but clothing. I think that there's some awesome stuff that I just want to talk about a couple of different things that I like to travel with that I think you will as well. The first things first is the pants. These have actually been in my video description for I think as long as I've done affiliate links on the channel. These are Piranha Zion men's stretch. These are just about the best things since sliced bread. They're super stretchy. They have 5 pockets. This pocket opens 2 ways, so like when you're sitting in an airplane, for example, you can put stuff in and out of this, like it's an extra side pocket. And they breathe super well. They dry almost instantly. They have buttons down here to be able to roll them up really easily, or they can fold back on themselves really easily. So they're just about the most versatile things in the world, and I highly recommend them, even if it's not for FPV or anything like that. Like, they are just the ultimate pants. So I gotta get that out of the way. I know you guys like to make fun of me for these, but they really are that awesome. Secondly, I also always travel with a hat. Just being able to kind of protect against sweat, keeping it out of the goggles, making sure that everything is staying dry so that you can actually see what's going on. I can't, every time I don't have a hat, I absolutely hate it. Another thing that I will refuse to travel without now is a rain jacket. I'm not the kind of guy that will carry an umbrella, but I will get soaked in a rain jacket all day long. This is just the perfect outer layer. It will stop wind, it will stop rain. It's awesome. I got mine at, I think this is the Cabela's brand, but anything like that would work perfectly. These rain jackets have saved my butt many times. In addition to a rain jacket, especially if I'm somewhere that's going to be cold, I will always have a fleece with me. These are extremely warm, and then paired with that rain jacket, you will stay warm and dry and happy. So I just always have this and that strapped to the outside of my bag. And something that I've been playing around with lately as another addition, thanks to Mr. Tony Niddle, aka Canoodle from DRL, and from the ex-host from the Quad Talk podcast, is a Shema. Now, this is an Arabic piece of clothing. You would typically use it to wrap your head or whatever, but it also has kind of been popularized as a military kind of thing, and it just has a ton of uses. So you can wear it around your neck, either to stay warm or actually even to stay cool. Typically, if I'm going to go for a hike and it's really warm out, I could just get this a little bit damp and wear it like this, and it will keep me extremely comfortable. So it's just this kind of thing, where you wear it almost like a scarf, and it just protects your neck, protects everything around you, and it's nice and comfortable. It's a useful tool. When I'm traveling by plane, you can fold it up, make it into a pillow kind of thing, just a nice little thing, as well as actually something that I found useful recently was we were out flying in Iceland, and we ended up in a spot where there were tons of bugs, and I was able to take the Shema and kind of do a bit of a wrap to keep the bugs off of my face. Like, I'm talking about, like, it was an insane amount. Like, they were flying into our mouths and essentially preventing us from being able to fly. So you just tie it up like this kind of style, and I can actually even just put the goggles on over it, and now the bugs are not messing with us. I can still get my flights in, and it looks a little funky, but you know what, it's awesome. And then you could use it as a towel. So like if you're getting sweaty, if you're getting wet or whatever, you know, you have this as an option. So I mean, it's kind of silly, but you know, I've taken it on a couple trips now, and I have been blown away with the amount of things that I've found useful to have this specifically for. So I don't think I'm going to stop traveling with it. So just something that I've been playing around with. So I hope that this whole overview of all of the gear, of all of the things that I'm using, ends up being somewhat useful to you. I know that there's probably more detail on some things than others that you would or would not necessarily need, like Shema's. But at the same time, I wanted to be thorough to kind of give you an overview of the things that I've been thinking about lately when it comes to traveling and when it comes to doing long range, when it comes to just being out, active, hiking, all of those sorts of things. So I hope that this was useful. I'm excited to show you the rest of the series. If you're watching this in the middle of the series or at the end of the series, thanks for checking it out, and then coming and checking this video out to see what's going on. Once again, everything, you know, there's gonna be a big link up at the bottom that you can go through and see all of the different things that are going on. And in the meantime, thanks for checking this out, and stay flying.